U.S. House Republicans blast the U.S. military, the Obama administration, and Hillary Clinton over the 2012 terror attacks in Benghazi, Libya. U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama stops in Morocco as part of her initiative to promote girls' education around the world. The U.S. Supreme Court strikes down tough abortion regulations that make the procedure hard to get in Texas. Africa 54 starts right now. Good evening, I'm Esther Gidu-Ewart. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori is off today. The Republican-led U.S. House Committee on Benghazi released their report Tuesday on the 2012 terror attacks in Libya that killed 4 Americans, including U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens. The 800-page report primarily faulted the U.S. military for responding too slowly to send help to Benghazi during the deadly assault, despite clear orders from President Barack Obama and the Pentagon. Republicans have repeatedly criticized the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State at the time and now is the presumptive Democratic nominee for president. The panel's chairman, Representative Trey Gowdy, detailed the chaos of that day.
No U.S. military asset was ever deployed to Benghazi despite the order of the Secretary of Defense at 7 o'clock that night. So Washington had access to real-time information, but yet somehow they thought the fighting had subsided. Washington had access to real-time information, but somehow they thought these fighters were going to evacuate, even without the remains of the ambassador, and without asking how is that evacuation supposed to be effectuated. How were you supposed to get from the annex to the Benghazi airport? Because it took you almost 3 hours to get from the airport to the annex. Who is supposed to take you?
Now, for more on the Benghazi report, VOA's Pam Dawkins is standing by live via Skype from the U.S. State Department. Pam, what is the State Department's reaction to this report?
Well, the State Department came out on the defense early today, refuting some of the allegations made by the committee about its handling of the Benghazi probe. Republicans on the Benghazi committee said the State Department was slow in providing information and that some of the information that it initially provided was inaccurate. But spokesman Mark Toner said the department cooperated extensively with the committee. He also said the committee frequently asked the State Department for information that was not directly relevant to the Benghazi probe and in volumes that the State Department could not provide. He said in one case, the department was asked to provide 22 years worth of emails about the topic of Libya.
Pam, let me take you back to yesterday. Also, we have the first U.S. ambassador to Somalia sworn in 25 years. What is the significance of restoring diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Somalia?
Well, this is actually the next step in a restoration process that began about a year ago. The Somali government reopened its embassy in Washington last year. Also in May of last year, Secretary of State Kerry made a surprise visit to Somalia, where he met with the country's president, prime minister, and civil society members. The U.S. and Somalia are cooperating in efforts such as counterterrorism, and also the U.S. has provided training and equipment to the African Union-led fight against al-Shabaab.
And quickly, Pam, what issues is Ambassador Stephen Schwartz likely to prioritize in the coming days when he gets to Nairobi?
Well, the U.S. is backing Somalia's efforts to stabilize through the political process, through economic recovery, as well as the fight against terrorism. During his swearing-in ceremony, Ambassador Schwartz indicated that he would continue with these priorities. He also voiced support for Somalia's efforts to put itself back together again following 2 decades of strife. He also said it was time for Somali authorities to establish a responsive and effective national army to defeat al-Shabaab and also to unite the country.
We know that he will briefly be in Nairobi. Do we know if he will be relocating to Mogadishu?
We don't have that information at that time. I'm sure we will hear more in the coming days.
Thank you, Pam. Pam Dawkins reporting live via Skype from the State Department. Islamic State militants are claiming responsibility for a wave of bombing Monday that killed at least 42 people in southern Yemen. The blasts targeted security forces in the port city of Mukalla and happened around sunset as the soldiers were breaking their fast for the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Mukalla was under the control of Al-Qaeda fighters until April, when pro-government forces recaptured it. Yemen's years of instability, including the current conflict between the government and Houthi rebels, have allowed militant groups to control parts of the country and carry out attacks. The United Nations is leading peace talks with the goal of creating a new unity government that can re-establish control in Yemen, but so far there has been no agreement. The U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama is in Morocco as part of her initiative to promote girls' education around the world. Obama was greeted by Princess Lala Salma when she arrived late Monday in Marrakech, accompanied by her two daughters, Malia and Sasha, and her mother, Marian Robinson. The family flew to Morocco after spending the day in Liberia, where she visited a leadership camp for girls sponsored by the Peace Corps and met with President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first elected female head of state in Africa. The U.S. First Lady is on a 6-day tour to promote her Let Girls Learn initiative, which addresses such obstacles as forced marriage, poverty, and violence that keep more than 62 million girls globally out of school. Academy Award-winning actress Meryl Streep joined Mrs. Obama on Tuesday. Following Britain's historic vote to leave the EU, European Union leaders have begun to address how their relationship with their soon-to-be former teammate will evolve. Germany's Angela Merkel addressed the German parliament today, saying that though Britain will lose the privileges that come with being an EU member, it will remain a close ally in NATO. She also warned that the EU must not lose sight of other pressing issues, such as the migrant crisis, but instead grow even stronger together and prevent further breakup.
Die Europäische Union ist stark genug.
The European Union is strong enough in order to absorb the exit of Great Britain. It is strong enough to proceed with only 27 members, and it is strong enough to represent its interests in the world. The European Union is one of the biggest economic zones in the world. It is a unique community of shared solidarity and values with great appeal in the whole world, and it guarantees peace, wealth, and stability.
Merkel cited Norway as an example how Britain could be in its relation to Europe, a non-EU member which has access to the free market because of its willingness to respect free movement. Merkel did, however, note that any formal discussion of the relationship would not occur until Britain begins the formal procedure to leave. In an emergency session with the European Parliament to discuss the Brexit vote, EU Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said he hopes Britain can maintain friendly relations with the EU, but reiterated that negotiations would not be possible until Britain was certain of its position. Supporters of abortion rights hailed the U.S. Supreme Court's decision on Monday to strike down tough regulations that make the procedure hard to get in Texas. Abortion is legal in the United States, but some states impose regulations aimed at discouraging the practice. VOA's Latza Hoke reports.
Abortion or pro-choice activists gathered in the nation's capital Monday had cause to celebrate. The top U.S. court sided with Texas clinics in arguing that the goal of the state's conservative politicians was to shut them down.
After years of fighting heartless, anti-choice politicians who would seemingly stop at nothing to put abortion out of reach, I want everybody to understand you don't mess with Texas women.
The ruling is likely to discourage other states from trying similar tactics.
Without question, today's Supreme Court decision is a game changer in the unrelenting assault on women's health and rights that has been going on in state legislatures for years.
Texas Governor Dan Patrick rejected the accusations, saying the regulations were intended to safeguard women's health.
You've heard Planned Parenthood and others who are for abortion say, you know, if we keep passing laws, you're going to have women in back alleys getting abortions. Well, this is what the Supreme Court approved today.
The 5-3 decision of the current 8-member court was a setback for pro-life activists and other groups that oppose abortion.
I believe that women deserve better than abortion. Abortion is a picture that we have failed women. And so I don't just want abortion to be illegal, I want it to be unthinkable.
Americans are almost equally divided on the issue, and both sides vow to continue the fight.
Texas appropriately tried to exercise its authority to protect women. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court sided with big abortion. So we stand here today as members of the pro-life movement saying that we will not give up.
Now the fight is to make sure everyone, despite their race, their income, where they live, can have access to safe abortion.
President Barack Obama welcomed the decision, saying it removes an unconstitutional obstacle in the path of a woman's reproductive freedom. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, the latest United Nations report on drugs and crime. Stay with us.
Green Beat for a healthier planet.
Samir Ibrahim saw a problem and came up with a solution for farmers trying to improve their yields under the scorching African sun.
A lot of farmers were just relying on the rain to grow food. And most farmers said they weren't irrigating because the recurring costs associated with irrigating were so high.
So Ibrahim, along with his business partner, came up with a solar-powered drip irrigation system that's helping farmers like Peter Mathenji save money and increase their yields.
Without it, we spend $300 every month, actually more than $300 every month, to buy diesel. And with agro-solar irrigation kit, we're making good use of the sun.
Ibrahim says African farmland produces up to 50% less than the world average for agriculture. But he says the agro-solar irrigation kit allows farmers to power an efficient irrigation system that can increase their yields threefold, while also cutting back water use by up to 80%. I'm VOA's Rebecca Ward for Green Beat.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
It's time now for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with an update on global air pollution. Hello, Lino.
The International Energy Agency says each year about 6.5 million deaths worldwide are linked to air pollution. The agency warns the number will grow unless the energy sector steps up its efforts to slash emissions. The IEA projects that premature death from outdoor air pollution will rise to 4.5 million by 2040 from 3 million today, while premature death from household air pollution will drop to 3 million from 3.5 million. Outdoor air pollution comes mainly from power plants, factories, and cars, while household pollution stems from dirty cook stoves, primarily in developing countries. Now, scientists have isolated potent HIV antibodies that have implications for the prevention and even destruction of the virus that causes AIDS. They say the powerful, broadly neutralizing antibodies are produced by an extremely small group of HIV-positive individuals. The antibodies have kept them alive and, in some cases, even thriving for many years without the use of antiretroviral drugs. The scientists have harnessed these super antibodies, which recognize and disarm many different strains of HIV, and have mass-produced them with the aim of giving them to normal HIV/AIDS patients. Writing in the journal Nature, the researchers say that among people who did not receive the new antibody, well, called 3BNC117 viral rebound occurred in about 2.5 weeks. Those who did receive it were able to delay rebound by as long as almost 10 weeks in some cases. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has released its latest World Drug Report. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime says the number of adults suffering from drug use disorders has gone up disproportionately for the first time in 6 years. The report adds that around 12 million people inject drugs and 14% of them are living with HIV. Aldo Leldemors is the Deputy Executive Director of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime.
There are about 5% of the adult population across the world, or nearly 250 million people between the ages of 15 and 64 years that have used drugs at least once in 2014. Now, what does it mean? It means that we haven't seen any growth in the rate of drug use over the past 4 years when we put it in proportion to the global population.
Leldemors says that heroin use is increasing in some parts of the world.
Another source of concern is, of course, heroin use, which seems to be increasing in some parts of the world rather sharply over the past 2 years. And I refer specifically to North America and parts of Western and Central Europe, and even in sort of individual countries such as Colombia. Heroin, therefore, continues to be the drug that kills the most people, and this resurgence must be addressed urgently.
Marijuana, meanwhile, remains the most commonly used drug at the global level. An estimated 183 million people have used it in 2014. The report notes that men are 3 times more likely than women to use cannabis, cocaine, or amphetamines, whereas women are more likely than men to engage in the non-medical use of opioids and tranquilizers. The report highlights a strong link between poverty and several aspects of illicit drug use and abuse. And that's our health report for today. Esther, back to you.
Thank you, Lino, for that report. Be sure to watch Lino Mudu every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa, right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Comic books gain momentum in Africa. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. The Democratic Republic of Congo says it will begin a campaign next month to vaccinate 11.6 million people against yellow fever after an epidemic was declared in the capital. In Cameroon, residents of Douala call on the government to improve drainage infrastructure after heavy rains caused flooding. In Nigeria, Senate President Bukola Saraki is accused, along with his deputy, Ike Ekweramudu, of forging the upper legislative chamber's rules. Finally, in Liberia, U.S. First Lady Michelle Obama launches a 3-nation tour to urge girls to stay in school. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
I'm Milar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents, a roundup of the world's top stories with analysis from our dedicated reporters. It's really a conversation the same way that you would bring a friend to your home and ask them what's going on. And our correspondents will do that and answer those questions through their own eyes.
That appears a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.
Patrice Talon is Benin's newest president. The West African nation has been a role model in the past 2 decades in democratic transitions, as it has shown its ability to hold peaceful, free and fair elections. My colleague Mariama Diallo sat down recently with the country's ambassador to the United States, Omar Aruna, in this exclusive interview.
It was no surprise to people who knows Benin that this election will be as seamless as it has been, and obviously, yes, what next is that now the countries, you can see, has already pulled together, and then we go to work.
Benin is certainly becoming the beacon of democracy in sub-Saharan Africa. In the last 20 years or 20 plus years, we can say from the Mathieu Kérékou to Soglo to Kérékou back in Benin, and Yayi Boni, who is stepping down, who also ran 2 terms. What is the secret for Benin?
The secret is dialogues. In Benin, we like to talk to each other. And we also have good friends around the world that encourage us to move forward in that direction. And beyond all that thing, you know, we like to be the leader in that region, at least for that. We don't have too much minerals, but we have something that we think we can push, which is our understanding of a good society is a democratic society, and we like to share that.
During his term, the president has promised to work hard in accelerating economic growth in Benin. Do you think he succeeded during his 2 terms?
I mean, when you look at all the indicators, you're talking about the economic indicators, you're talking about the social indicators, we are above 5% of our growth anyway. One of the indicators I like to use, because I'm the Benin ambassador in the U.S., is basically from 2004 to date, our export trade exchange between the U.S. and Benin is 1,600% from 2004. So that means something is moving.
What do you think the new president needs to do to continue moving forward?
Definitely, the new president needs to follow the policies that have been put in place.
And when you talk about policies, what do you mean?
We're talking about fight against corruptions. We're talking about social policy that help, like in the U.S., we have universal health coverage, for example. Some of those policies that I think need to be pursued. And also in relation to that, I think investment, foreign direct investment, need to be encouraged.
You touched earlier on countries also outside Benin, which have been very helpful to you. Curious to know, for example, for a country like the United States, what kind of relationship have you built over the years, and how did it help the country grow?
For the past 2 years, I've seen the U.S. Our relationship with Benin deepening, because democracy is not something that is just stand alone. Is about context, is about the environment, and help us create the environment, security environment. We have a very good relationship with the U.S. when it comes to security collaboration. But beyond that, also, we do have a very good partner in other countries such as France and our neighbor, Nigeria, Togo, Niger.
Benin has benefited not from one compact, but 2 compacts totaling almost nearly $800 million. So curious to know, what was that money used for?
The first compact was basically, I think, is in amount of $308 million. The area that is touched on was access to land, financial environment, access to market, which is the port. So these are some of the major reform, and also justice. We were able to obtain a second compact, roughly about $375 million, plus $28 million from Benin itself. So we got a compact of $400 million.
Here in Washington, D.C., Unique Studios is creating an authentic African superhero that operates in a futuristic Nigeria. Is this a sign that comic books are gaining momentum in Africa, a continent that was said to lack interest in African-inspired comics? Roy Okupe was one of the few Africans who exhibited their work at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit last week in Silicon Valley, California. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
The African superhero universe continues to widen with the emergence of a comic book, EXO, The Legend of Well Williams, a science fiction graphic novel about redemption set in a futuristic 2025 Nigeria. The comic book follows the journey of Will Williams, an impetuous young adult who inherits a suite with superpowers after his father goes missing. Roy Okupe is the brains behind the graphic novel.
I grew up watching superheroes, cartoons, try to read as many comic books as possible, and immediately I fell in love with the genre. But I noticed that there weren't a lot from Nigeria, where I was born, or even Africa as a whole. And I always thought it would be cool to actually see an African superhero or a Nigerian superhero in a Nigerian environment.
With a keen interest in graphics and creative writing, the Lagos-born Okupi studied computer science at both undergrad and graduate level at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. His passion for animation led him to start Unique Studios, which would allow him to pursue his dreams of creating a diverse library of superheroes and inspire African young children.
I want to showcase African talent on a global level. There's a lot of talented people in Africa and Nigeria right now who do a lot of stuff in animation, comic books, and video games, but they don't really get recognition outside the country or even outside the continent as a whole.
Okupe's superhero was received with critical acclaim and has since been featured on different media outlets.
There is no good, no evil, only men who have yet to decide what drives them.
Inspire people to chase their dreams while I'm living mine. This has been a dream since I was a child, to create an African superhero, a Nigerian superhero, based in a country that I was born, where I grew up, and in an environment where I grew up. So, I mean, each and every day, that's really what pushes me. What inspires me is mainly trying to inspire other people, because this is more than comic books for me.
Unlike Nigeria's thriving Nollywood film industry, the animation sector is relatively unestablished. For self-made animators like Okupe, the challenges are daunting.
So initially the challenge was trying to get the animation out and not really getting any encouragement from anybody in the industry. So that's why I decided, let me take a step back, let me do it as a comic book first and actually organically grow my fan base, and then prove that there's actually a market for this, and then go back to doing the animated series or animated movies. So
critics say in Nigeria, a majority of animators struggle to complete their projects due to lack of proper studio facilities, funding and training. But Okupi says there is still some hope. EXO, the legend of Wild Williams, has something that other superheroes are created by Americans usually lack, and that is cultural authenticity. In fact, some industry analysts say if the success of Nollywood is anything to go by, the animation industry's growth potential in Africa is enormous. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Africa Rising indeed. Thank you, Paul, for that report. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
Here is a story that has to do with defects or problems with cars.
Listen for the word that means to take back something. Recall.
They had meetings over this defect. They shared complaints over this defect. Yet there was no investigation by the government and no recall by General Motors until 10 years later.
Recall. It is a word that means to ask people officially to return something.
In our story, there were major problems with some General Motors cars. The man says the U.S. government and the car company took too long to issue a recall, so the cars could be fixed.
Now, when you hear the word recall, your American English will be good enough to know what this newsword means.
I'm Vincent Makori from Africa 54. This is VOA. Follow us on Africa 54. Go to facebook.com/VOA. VOA Africa 54.